9 years ago, a doctor sat across from me and said words I never thought I'd hear directed at me. I'm Arthur. I was 73 years old at the time, and what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about living. I want to be careful here, because I don't want you to think this is a story about beating the odds in some dramatic movie poster kind of way. It isn't. It's quieter than that. It's more confusing than that, honestly, because when someone tells you that you have roughly 6 months left on this earth, the strangest thing happens. You don't fall apart immediately. You just sit there in a beige chair in a beige office, and you notice that the doctor has a small coffee stain on his tie. And you think to yourself, somebody should have told him about that before his appointments today. That's where my mind went. A coffee stain. My wife Margaret was with me. She had her hand on my knee the whole time the doctor was talking, and I could feel her grip tighten with every sentence, but she didn't cry in that room. Neither of us did. We saved that for the car, for the long drive home through streets that looked exactly the same as they had 2 hours earlier, which felt almost offensive somehow. The world just kept going. Traffic lights changed. People walked dogs. A kid rode a bicycle with no hands. I had been diagnosed with a particularly aggressive form of pancreatic cancer. The doctor was kind. He was honest. He told me that surgery wasn't a realistic option given where things stood, that there were treatments we could try, that some people responded better than others, but that I should begin thinking about getting my affairs in order. That phrase, getting your affairs in order, I had heard it before in other contexts, always about other people. Now it was mine to carry home in a paper bag like leftovers from a restaurant. I was 73. I had worked as a civil engineer for 38 years. I had built bridges, literally built bridges, which sounds like a metaphor but was just my job. Margaret and I had raised 3 children in a house on Elm Creek Road. A house with a leaky gutter we never fully fixed. A backyard where our dog Pepper used to sleep in the one patch of afternoon sun that came through the oak tree. I had a good life. I knew that. I wasn't the kind of man who spent his years ungrateful. But when you're told it's ending, you don't think about the good parts first. You think about the things you left unfinished. I thought about my son Daniel, who I had not spoken to properly in almost 4 years following an argument that had calcified into something neither of us knew how to dissolve. I thought about a fishing trip I kept promising my youngest grandson and kept postponing because there was always something else, always next weekend, always when things slowed down. I thought about Margaret, who had been my partner since we were both 26 years old, and how I had never once written down what I wanted to say to her. I kept it all in my chest, like it would somehow transfer on its own. The weeks after the diagnosis were strange. We told the children. We had a family dinner that nobody wanted to have, where everyone was trying so hard to be normal and strong that the whole thing felt like a stage performance. My daughter kept refilling water glasses that didn't need refilling. My son-in-law talked about sports for 20 minutes in a way that I think was his best attempt at comfort, and Daniel came. He drove 4 hours and he came, and we didn't say anything about the 4 years. We just sat next to each other on the back porch after dinner in the dark, and that was enough for that night. I began treatment. The oncologist was a younger woman, maybe 40, with a directness I appreciated because I was too old and too tired for softness that wasn't real. She laid out what we were doing and why, what she hoped for, what she didn't know. I liked her. I still see her, which I'll get to. What I want to describe, and I'm not sure I have the right words for it even now, is what those first months did to the way I experienced ordinary time. I'm not going to tell you that I suddenly appreciated sunsets or that food tasted better. That kind of thing gets said too often, and it turns something real into something that sounds like a greeting card. What actually happened was more uncomfortable than that. I started noticing how much of my daily life I had been moving through on a kind of autopilot, not because I was unhappy, but because familiarity is efficient. You stop seeing things you've looked at 1,000 times. You stop hearing things you've heard so often they've become background. And suddenly, with a number attached to my remaining life, that efficiency felt like a form of sleepwalking. I had been present in my life without being fully awake inside it. Margaret and I started taking walks every morning. Not for exercise, not for any particular health reason, just because we wanted to be moving together in the day. We'd walk around the neighborhood, sometimes for 20 minutes, sometimes for an hour, and we'd talk in the way that people talk when they've stopped pretending they have unlimited time. We talked about things from the early years of our marriage that we hadn't thought about in decades. We talked about who we had each been at 30, at 40, the versions of ourselves that had existed before the children, before the mortgage, before all the accumulation. It was like finding old letters you'd forgotten you'd written. Somewhere around the 5th month, something unexpected happened medically. My numbers shifted in a direction that surprised my oncologist. Not dramatically, not miraculously, but measurably. She adjusted the treatment. We watched carefully. The shift held. Then it improved slightly more. She was cautious in the way good doctors are cautious, careful not to let hope become a clinical statement. But I could see something different in how she was looking at my charts. I am not going to stand here, or sit here, I suppose, and tell you that positive thinking cured me, or that love healed my body, or that I found some secret the doctors didn't know. I don't believe that, and I wouldn't insult you with it. What I believe is that my body responded to a treatment in a way that was fortunate and uncommon, and that the doctors who cared for me were skilled and attentive, and that I was lucky in a way that I do not take lightly, because I know other people face the same diagnosis with the same will to live and do not get the outcome I got. By the end of that first year, the conversation had changed from months to monitoring, then from monitoring to maintenance, then gradually to something my oncologist said to me about 3 years in that I've turned over in my mind ever since. She said that in medicine we learn from the exceptions, and that I had become, in the gentlest possible way, an exception. I didn't know how to receive that. I still don't. Entirely. I am 82 now. I have seen 9 more years that I was not supposed to see. My granddaughter, who was 8 when I got that diagnosis, is now 17, and last spring she asked me to teach her to drive, which I did badly, and which Margaret found deeply amusing. I went on that fishing trip with my grandson. We caught almost nothing and talked the entire day, and it was one of the finest days I can remember. Daniel and I repaired what had broken between us. It took time and honesty and several conversations neither of us was comfortable having, but we got there. And now we talk every Sunday evening, and sometimes about nothing in particular, which is its own kind of gift. Margaret is still here. We still take those morning walks, though we go a bit slower now, and sometimes we just sit on the bench at the end of our street instead of walking the full loop. We don't talk about what we talked about in those early days with the same urgency anymore, but the quality of attention we found in those walks, the way of being present with each other, that stayed. What I want to say to you, and I'm trying to find the honest version of it rather than the comfortable version, is this. I don't know why I got more time. I'm not sure the question has an answer that would satisfy either of us. What I do know is what I did with the time I thought was ending, and how that changed what I did with the time that wasn't. The appointment I kept postponing, I kept it. The words I'd been storing up in my chest instead of saying out loud, I said them. Not in a rush, not dramatically, just steadily, the way you'd clear out a room you'd been meaning to sort through for years. If you're sitting somewhere right now listening to an old man you've never met, I'm not going to tell you to live every day like it's your last, because that's exhausting and mostly impossible and nobody actually does it. What I'll tell you instead is this. There are probably one or two things you've been meaning to do, or say, or finally address, that you've been filing under when things slow down. I filed things there too. I know that drawer. And I can tell you that the drawer doesn't empty on its own, and things slow down less often than we expect them to. I'm not in a hurry to tell you what those things are for you. You know what they are. You've probably thought of one or two of them already while I've been talking. I'm 82 years old, and I still have a leaky gutter I haven't fixed. Some things stay the same, but the things that mattered, I attended to them. And on a cool Tuesday morning, when I'm sitting on that bench at the end of my street with Margaret beside me, watching the neighborhood go about its day, I feel the particular quiet of a man who said what he needed to say and did what he meant to do. That's not everything, but it's not nothing either.